Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're venturing into a truly unique perspective on an ancient practice, artificial mummification, also known as embalming.
Yeah, and our guide for this is, well, it's a pretty unusual source material. It's a YouTube transcript of a session using what they call the Calogero Grifasi method.
Right, involving a hypno-operator and a telepath support.
Mm.
So our mission here is to really unpack the origins, the purposes, and maybe some surprising metaphysical angles on mummification based purely on what's in this transcript.
Exactly. And listeners should know this might go beyond the usual stuff you hear about Egypt.
Definitely. So let's dive right in. Origins. What does the source say about why mummification even started?
Okay, so this is fascinating right off the bat. The initial visualization wasn't really about preserving the body after death like we normally think.
Oh, so not the whole King Tut thing?
Not initially, no. According to the hypno-operator's view, it seems like the first focus was actually on improving physical appearance during life.
Improving appearance, like ancient cosmetic.
Right. Sort of, yeah. It suggests maybe a deep concern with how you looked, maybe reflecting your inner status or like spiritual health.
Okay, hold on. So we're not talking preparing for the afterlife journey, but more like looking good while you're still around. That really flips the script.
It does. And the transcript mentions this embalming in life later on.
Right, right. What did that involve?
Well, it talks about important people using things like herbs, clays, honey, flowers, resins, almost like, super elaborate ancient spa treatments.
Huh, like a high-status wellness routine. Interesting. So maybe the impulse wasn't cheating death, but optimizing life.
That seems to be the indical idea presented here. Now, obviously, the mummification did become a post-mortem practice across loads of ancient cultures, right?
Right.
Egypt, South America, other places.
Yeah, geographically miles apart, culturally different. What's the common link, according to this source?
The telepath support picked up on this key idea that the procedure, the post-mortem one, prepared the body for the potential return of the soul. That belief seems to pop up in various forms across these different societies.
Okay, but wait. If they also believed in reincarnation, like the soul moving on, why preserve the old body? Seems kind of contradictory, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does seem illogical on the surface, and the transcript offers a pretty wild explanation for that.
Okay, I'm ready.
The idea presented is that this concept, this soul return idea, didn't just spring up independently everywhere. It supposedly came from a single non-terrestrial civilization.
Whoa. Non-terrestrial, as in aliens.
That's the implication, that this civilization influenced early human cultures or maybe even branched out, and subsequent civilizations just kind of adopted these ideas about the soul and how to prep the body.
Okay, so not separate discoveries, but like a cultural download from somewhere else. They were shaping beliefs about death from the get-go.
That's what this source suggests, yeah. It's a pretty big claim. Now, shifting focus a bit. The transcript talks about the effect of embalming on the subliminal self.
The subliminal self. Okay, like our subconscious mind, the deeper part.
Sort of, yeah. The non-conscious part holding memories, experiences, maybe not always in our awareness, and the interplay between that and the physical embalming process is apparently quite significant.
How so? What's the impact?
Well, it depends on when the embalming happens, relative to the subliminal self leaving the body, and also the methods used. The key thing is, if the subliminal self is still strongly connected to the body during embalming.
Which involves, physical stuff, draining fluids, chemicals.
Exactly. That physical manipulation can apparently be a really traumatizing experience for that subliminal self. It perceives what's happening, but maybe without the conscious understanding or detachment.
Traumatizing, like it still feels it.
That's the idea, yeah. It experiences the physical intrusion without the usual cognitive buffers. It's different from, say, natural mummification.
Like those bog bodies or ones preserved in deserts.
Right. The transcript suggests that allows for a slower, more natural separation. The subliminal self kind of consciously releases the material form in a less jarring way. So gradual drying is seen differently, energetically, than invasive embalming.
Okay, so slow fade, good. Artificial intervention, potentially bad on a deeper level. Now, what about that link we always hear about mummification and reincarnation? Are they fundamentally connected here?
Surprisingly, no. This source suggests there's no direct inherent link. It's more like an idea that got established over time, for cultural reasons, maybe even manipulative ones, but not a fundamental metaphysical connection.
Huh. So the Egyptians weren't necessarily thinking, let's preserve Pharaoh so he can come back as a scarab beetle. It's more of a learned idea.
That's the angle this transcript takes. Now, it gets really specific when talking about the metaphysical side of Egyptian mummification. It mentions the brutalities involved, especially removing the organs.
Ah, yes, the canopic jars. What's the metaphysical significance of taking out the organs?
So on a metaphysical level, this extraction is said to cause a shedding of energy from those organs.
Sure.
It wasn't just physical emptying.
Okay.
Apparently, skilled operators could actually energetically release the full energy signature of each organ. It wasn't just anyone doing it. It required training in these subtle energies.
Energetically release. So they weren't just taking the physical liver, but its unique energy pattern too. Why? What was the point of that?
We'll get to the why in just a sec. But first, think about that classic Egyptian thing, discarding the brain, but carefully keeping the heart.
Right. I always wondered about that.
The metaphysical reasons given here are pretty specific. The heart was seen as directly linked to the energy a person emits, like an energetic transmitter,
Right.
even after physical death, a central hub for their energy signature.
The heart as an energetic beacon. Wow. Okay, but then why chuck the brain, the seat of consciousness?
According to this source, the brain was considered contaminated
Contaminated by what?
by thoughts, experiences, external influences from life. All that processing altered its original energetic structure. So it became really hard to find a consistent vibrational frequency, a reliable energy signature across different people's brains.
Ah, okay. So heart, fairly stable energy signal, brain, a unique jumbled recording of life, made it energetically messy and inconsistent.
Exactly. Too variable to be useful in the same way the heart supposedly was.
Right. Now, let's loop back to that non-terrestrial civilization you mentioned, the ones who supposedly created us on this earth. How were they involved in mummification?
The transcript suggests they initiated it as a procedure to create a dependence on rituals for understanding death, the transition to another plane.
So, like setting up a system, maybe managing how people perceive death in the afterlife, controlling the narrative.
That's kind of the implication, yeah. Making people rely on certain practices and beliefs, perhaps ones that require their oversight or knowledge.
And the source connects this to modern burial, too.
Yeah, it draws an analogy to things like coffins and shrouds, suggesting these customs also originate from that same initial civilization's influence.
So whether it's a fancy casket or a simple cloth.
Energetically, the transcript claims there's no real difference. They're just different cultural expressions of the same underlying principle, originating from that first influence on how to handle the dead.
Okay. So,
To experiment with creating perfect, indestructible organs on a metaphysical level. Not physical ones, but their energetic blueprint.
indestructible metaphysical organs. What's the point of that?
The goal seems to have been understanding and maybe manipulating the fundamental energetic structure of life itself, perhaps to overcome limitations, vulnerabilities. But the transcript notes they haven't actually succeeded in making a perfect final version
Why not?
because of the huge variations in energy and vibration between individuals. It's incredibly hard to find a balance, a one-size-fits-all energetic template. Our individual uniqueness is apparently a major hurdle.
So even these advanced beings couldn't quite standardize the energy of life. Fascinating. Now, was this organ extraction thing just the Egyptians, or did other cultures do it too?
The transcript mentions tribal, sort of primitive civilizations in remote areas that apparently still do similar practices, based purely on tradition. Like they're untouched by outside influences and might not even understand the energetic harvesting aspect.
So bits of the physical practice might have survived elsewhere, even if the original why was lost or changed.
That's the suggestion, yeah. Maybe just carried on as ritual.
Okay. Let's revisit the brain again. You said it was discarded because it was energetically contaminated, too inconsistent. Why was that inconsistency such a deal breaker for these energy engineers?
Well, think about it. Other organs have relatively stable functions, right? A liver filters, a heart pumps. Their basic energetic job is fairly consistent.
Okay.
But the brain, it's constantly changing, shaped by every thought, emotion, experience, sight, sound, perpetual flux. That constant change made it basically impossible to find a reliable baseline, a consistent energetic signature to study or use in their experiments.
Too much noise in the signal, a moving target.
Exactly. Each brain is its own unique, ever-changing energy landscape, unlike, say, the liver's core energetic function.
That makes a weird kind of sense. Okay, who are the people actually doing this intricate organ removal? The earthly team.
The transcript describes them as highly skilled individuals, often young males, maybe around 10 to 12 years old, chosen for their innate energetic sensitivity.
Wow, kids.
Yeah, and they got intense training, not just in the physical procedure, but crucially in the energetic side, how to release and manage that organ energy.
Metaphysical surgical apprentices. And they weren't alone, right? You mentioned entities, gods.
That's right. The process was supposedly helped by metaphysical entities, the ones often called gods, who were invited through rituals, and each entity was linked to a specific organ. Specialists, basically.
A divine surgical team. Okay, who are these entities? Any names mentioned?
Yeah, a few specific descriptions. Anubis was apparently the coordinator, overseeing everything, and specifically observing and decoding energetic DNA.
Energetic DNA, okay. And the others?
For the liver, the entity's energy was described as reptiloid, very harsh, massive. The heart's entity was different, more ethereal, seen as feminine, a hybrid with multiple facets, insectoid and humanoid energy, and even an emotional body.
A hybrid insectoid humanoid with emotions for the heart. That's specific.
Kidneys, linked to a reptilian entity, long, thin, slippery, fast. Pancreas, a very dense, slimy entity with draconian energy. And the thymus gland, similar entity to the heart's, but less performant, representing the spark of truth or the being's essence.
What a lineup. Reptilians, draconians, hybrids. So what was their main job? Just collecting?
Pretty much. Their main role, according to this, was to collect the energy and that energetic DNA from each organ. Specialized energy harvesters for the metaphysical plane.
Okay. So after all this energy harvesting and organ removal, what happened to the subliminal self of the person who died?
Its fate depended on the person's beliefs and intentions during life.
How so?
For those who consciously chose mummification, understanding these processes, their subliminal selves were apparently taken by these entities. But if someone was mummified without that prior knowledge or consent, their subliminal self followed a different path after death.
So awareness mattered. What did the entities do with the subliminal cells they collected? Just file them away?
They apparently archived them, yeah. And after extracting the knowledge and experiences from them, they used these archived subliminal cells in experiments related to reincarnation.
Experiments.
Yeah, to observe evolutionary changes, see how previous life conditions affected the next incarnation, like using souls as data points in a long-term study of consciousness.
Reincarnation research using archived souls. Okay, that is truly bizarre. Shifting to today, the transcript mentioned modern mummification. What's that about?
It's not the ancient style. It's more about preservation in capsules using a gas to stop decomposition.
Like cryogenics.
Similar idea, maybe not exactly the same tech. The transcript mentions research institutes, one in Illinois specifically, where people volunteer or families choose this to preserve the body. They look kind of frozen.
For future research or?
Could be, or maybe personal reasons. And the subliminal self in these cases.
What about it? Same deal.
Seems analogous to the old ways, according to the source. Some might stay near the body, others detach based on their life choices, beliefs, attachments. The core principles seem consistent.
Attachment and belief still ruling the metaphysical road. Okay. And that embalming in life idea popped up again. Remind me what that was about.
Right. Practiced by important people. Presented as a potentially manipulative program, linking physical improvement in life with the post-mortem stuff. Using those natural things, herbs, resins.
Ancient wellness regimes with a hidden agenda?
Possibly. Like subtly connecting self-care with beliefs about death and the afterlife. And it seems connected to the post-mortem process, at least in Egypt.
How connected?
The transcript suggests there were maybe two stages of the same overall procedure. The life embalming, as prep, physically and maybe psychologically. Then the post-mortem embalming was crucial to stop decay quickly, creating a sterile field for the energetic extractions during the main mummification wrapping phase.
Got it. Prep the vessel before the main event. Okay, one more angle. Burial versus cremation. What does this source say energetically?
Physically, no big difference mentioned for information retrieval. But energetically, cremation is described as way more intense, more destructive to the body's informational matrix.
Informational matrix, like an energy blueprint.
Yeah, think of it like that. Burial leaves that matrix largely intact. Cremation is more like wiping the hard drive completely.
Okay, so the data of a buried body might still be accessible or influenced by beliefs and rituals.
That's the idea presented. Whereas cremation is a much cleaner break, energetically speaking.
And for the subliminal self, which is easier.
Cremation is suggested as generally an easier, quicker transition for the subliminal self. Though it could still hang around the site, it's seen as less potentially traumatizing than embalming's physical intrusion.
Less traumatic than embalming. But what about sudden incineration, like in a fire?
Ah, yeah, the transcript notes that can be extremely traumatizing.
Wait.
Because it's so rapid and violent, happening close to the moment of death. Burial allows a more gradual detachment, influenced by beliefs and attachments.
Okay, gradual versus quick release. The source also kept hinting mummification itself was manipulation. What was the core manipulative aspect again?
It circles back to the idea that the whole program, the rituals, the beliefs, might have been less about helping the soul and more about facilitating that organ energy extraction for those non-terrestrial beings, and maybe influencing human life choices and culture along the way.
A huge, long-running energy harvest disguised as religion. That is a lot. Okay, last thing. Modern embalming for burial. Any actual physical benefit or just for looks?
According to this transcript, no inherent benefit to the body's natural decomposition process. It's mainly for the living.
How so?
It meets our emotional needs, fulfills cultural expectations, gives a sense of respect, makes the body look acceptable for viewing. It's about closure and tradition for the survivors, not really anything for the physical remains themselves.
So more about our comfort than anything else. Wow. Okay, this has been quite the deep dive. Unexpected doesn't even begin to cover it. We've gone from ancient beauty treatments to non-terrestrial energy harvesting, divine surgical teams, metaphysical organ blueprints.
Yeah, all from this one very specific hypnotic session transcript.
Yeah.
It definitely throws a wrench into the standard historical narrative of mummification, doesn't it?
It really does. The contrast with traditional views is stark. It's almost sci-fi framed around ancient practices.
Pushes you to consider some wild possibilities, for sure.
Absolutely. Which brings us to our final thought for everyone listening. If you consider these, let's say, unconventional ideas about energy extraction, off-world influence, the subliminal self's journey, how might that make you rethink ancient beliefs about the afterlife and that enduring link between the body and whatever comes next?
Definitely something to mull over. It challenges a lot of assumptions.
It certainly does.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for joining us on this very unusual deep dive.